Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We haven't posted anything in a while, and I could just not post something. So we haven't been able to get together. So I went and searched around, and we had a old podcast that was just me and Robert Tucci, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you guys for listening. For those who do it on the regular basis and are giving me feedback, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Corey Harpin. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, all of you guys. If I didn't mention you, remind me so that I will next time. Thank you to our sponsors, BlueBetsy.com, Alpaca Chicken, and Nation Homes. Take it away, guys. Hope you enjoy it. All right, we're live. What's up, brother?
What's going on?
¿Cómo se llama?
I don't speak Spanish.
Welcome to episode 11, man. So today I got Robert Tucci here with me. He was kind enough to show up. Sorry I said your full name. No, you'd probably rather remain anonymous.
Well, I'm top secret.
I can always delete that just in case you run
you
for
probably
office.
should.
Yeah, I will. But yeah, we're missing a few members. Rambir Bashki is in another one of his wild vacations. Hassan was busy and Elias is busy, but Elias might join us later. We thought we'd go ahead and get started. We want to talk about some crazy stuff. We're not really sure what we're going to talk about. We have some ideas, but we want to just keep this going. We have our own mics and we're feeling good.
Feeling really good.
So I want to keep it light. We've been going in this like crazy political things. I wanted to have a light podcast. So I thought we talked about diversity.
Well, what a hell of a topic.
I think I'll keep it light. What are your thoughts on that?
That's pretty light. I
so
mean,
what do you think about diversity? Is that too wide of a thing to ask you?
I think it's important. It's really important.
But is it?
You don't think so?
No, I think it is. I'm just being, argumentative.
Well,
Here's my thoughts. Here's what I think about it. Okay, ready? So we as humans, for longer than we lived this way, we lived in tribes, correct? Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
And we developed certain mechanisms to be able to survive in such tribes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as first learning to, it was probably first hard to work in a group.
Mm-hmm.
Once we figure out how to work in groups, we figured out that not every group was conducive or the society was not sustainable if we involved people from other groups. So over, hundreds of years, we developed these tribal behaviors, right? So we tend to feel more comfortable with people who are the same as us, right?
But what does it mean to be the same?
Right.
You
So
know?
look the same, talk the same cultures. Same upbringing. That's a good question. I don't know.
Like we're Americans, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, is that our tribe? Because some people might say yes, some people might say no. Other people who identify as Americans and feel themselves very patriotic still might say that Americans that are brown
are not American.
Are not, well, not that they're not American, but that they're not friendly or they're not them. They're not a part of their tribe. So I think that's an important question. Like, diversity is important, but also what tribe do you belong to? And what is your tribe?
Well, and that goes back to, if we keep on going with that idea, the first thing that you're going to associate to is people that look the same. So even if you start from your family, right, that was probably the original tribe is your family. You're going to have the same genes in which you're going to produce people that look somewhat the same, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there, you kind of associate it with people that also look the same as you. So I would assume culturally, and I'm sure there's people listening that know the answer to this. They're probably like sociology experts, but we're just talking out of our.
That's not me, by the way.
We don't. We neither of us are experts. So, but it's fun to talk about it. So, if you think about it that way, then the first thing that you care about is the way that somebody looks, and the second thing that you care about is what they have to bring into a situation, or their thoughts, or their ideals, right? So. Yeah. So, for example, like I know right now in a company that I've heard of, not the company I work for, there's been such talk about
inclusion and diversity and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it brought up these topics, and in such company, like 90% to like a really high percentage of managers are white males. Okay.
Well, and I think that's universal. I mean, I think across the board for corporate America, not even just corporate America, any company you look at,
right,
for the most part, who are the decision makers?
Yeah,
it's white men.
Well, but
right?
because and this is my thoughts, right? Historically, since the 50s or 60s or whatever in this country, the white male or had the power, right?
Right.
So you raise your kids to, in a way, to feel very confident, and then you can't apply for these positions and X, Y, and Z. It doesn't mean that right now it doesn't mean that they're purposely hiring white males right now, is what I'm getting to. Right? So that's where it starts getting really tricky. Like, okay, so 90% of the people are white males.
Right.
But it's not because they're purposely. So they might have been interviewing somebody. Like, let's say I'm a manager and interviewing somebody new off the street, and I'm interviewing a white guy, a black guy, and an Indian guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happen to connect with the white guy better, right? I mean, I'm making myself white in this scenario. I don't know.
Right.
But you're not really thinking of that. You're just saying, you know what, for some reason I like this guy. I like his style. Like you relate to him more. You kind of had a better conversation with him. You guys.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call implicit biases.
But, okay, so at that point, is this biases even anybody's fault? So the only way to fix this is by being aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I don't know if that's the only way to fix it, but that is definitely one way to fix it, right? Where each of us becomes more self-aware of our own prejudices, so to speak. But also, I think it has to be community-wide, where everybody takes a close look at where they fit in society, right? And really analyzes, okay, where do we go from here? Because not everyone necessarily thinks that what they're doing is wrong, right? So they don't have the initiative to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to really think about all these, in your example, all these applicants that I've interviewed, and really examine them on an objective basis, where I'm taking my own prejudice out and just really trying to choose the best candidate. A lot of times people don't think that they're making a wrong decision because they connect with that person, right? So it's really that overcoming that hurdle. That's the hardest part, is getting people to understand that whereas they're not explicitly biased against certain individuals, right? Implicitly they are. And that's where a lot of people have the issue, because who are we to say, you're not actively racist, but you kind of are anyway.
Right.
So how do you approach that?
But the problem with that is then the overcorrection of it, right? And that's where you would have issues like, okay, so now because I'm trying to correct this biases I became aware of that there is a bias, right? So if I'm still in this scenario, I became aware there's a bias. I don't want to continue to make that mistake. But now my interview process has become skewed because now I'm overcompensating anybody who is not white or a male, right? Or, I mean, it's almost like it has to happen, right? Is that right? And then that's where it starts getting tricky, because then the white males start, oh, this is bullshit. And that's a lot of the arguments against like affirmative action and things like that. Even though there needs to be a correction because there is an imbalance, but it's also like it's very hard to sell, and it's like that's where the criticisms of it come in, right?
Well, it's hard to sell. It's also hard to like institute something to change that, like nationwide or
right,
community wide. What do you do? How do you fix that?
Right, and all happens is that there's things that start getting measured. So when the criticism comes up, now in 2019, no company wants to have that to be a thing that they go through. So they start measuring how many non-white males get promoted, and then there is an overcorrection, and then there's also then all kinds of. But in a way, that is, I don't know which one's better. So some of the things that could come up, right, in such companies would be people coming up and saying, "Well, I've been as a non-white person, I've just never felt like I could stand up because I didn't feel confident enough. Like my parents never really told me that I should. My parents told me I should just be in my place, and I should never like raise my hand to be a manager unless it was offered to me." Which, the average white male or the average, they're going to be like, "Oh, I totally should be a manager. I should be a leader, and I should be." But there's really nothing. So, you can't fix everybody's things culturally from their family at work.
No.
Or you can expect that maybe the next generation of people are more confident and more interracial. I don't know.
And that's, I think, a huge complaint of the Twitter sphere, as Bill Maher likes to say. Is like all these people that are targeting companies rather than looking at themselves.
Oh, you're right.
And I'm not sure that the right approach is to, is to go on Twitter and like try and institute change via the keyboard when all of us have these implicit bias, every single person. And that's, I think, in a lot of ways, a defense mechanism. Right? Because just as you said, people that are different than us, we see as a threat. But we can change that by, nurturing and teaching our children when they're still little that, hey, America is a country of immigrants, and there's a lot of people that are different than us. There's no reason to be scared of them, And I fear that that's not what is going on in a lot of, especially rural areas in this country. We're from North Carolina, and there's a lot of rural areas in North Carolina. I mean, we have Raleigh, Charlotte, Winston, Wilmington. They're all cities, but what are those areas in between? Like Rowan County and Robeson County, where Lumberton is, There's a lot of homogenous communities there, and by homogenous I mean communities that are the same. So like a lot of white communities, a lot of Lumbee Indian communities, a lot of Latino communities, and they all group together and then kind of progress from there. But I think that's why there's a huge progressive movement in cities, is because there's a lot of people that are different. And it's just the normal way of life, But in these rural areas, you don't necessarily see someone that is different from you, that is a different skin tone or so forth. And so when you move to a city, or when you go to university, or when you in school meet someone that you didn't see growing up, you view that person as a threat. And I think that is the fundamental problem in our society. And it's unfortunately by this president, by a lot of politicians, that is encouraged.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, I always found Donald Trump being very interesting at doing this, right? Because he's not outright being racist, or he doesn't claim to be racist. And I agree with you. A lot of it is exposure. Have you been exposed to other cultures? The more you have, the more understanding you become. If you're in your own area, and maybe you're only around other people that look like you, that whole like innate, that whole being part of a tribe kind of gets intensified. And if you feel insecure, and if you're maybe not the most educated person out there, you start getting really angry at other races, right? Mm-hmm. And nowadays what you describe is happening less and less, especially in younger generations, because we have things like the internet, in which you can be exposed to a bunch of different cultures, even if you live in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But with older generations, that's a problem, right? So we were talking about Donald Trump earlier before the podcast, and it's interesting what he's managed to do is cater to a lot of these people who are maybe insecure, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about, but he's catered to them, people that felt like, fuck this.
Yeah, I think you're selling yourself short. You do know what you're talking about, because you're a citizen,
Well, yeah, I've been here for a while, but yeah, he catered to these people who are feeling upset, and maybe they just don't. They feel like something needs to change. They might be wrongly accusing different races or whatever, but they don't know any better. But somehow he's not necessarily being outright racist, but he's somehow
tapping into it,
and the claim is that a lot of this neo-Nazis and racists and KKK people have been empowered by his presidency.
Yeah.
So is that really the case, or he's just being a nut job, or there's people because these people were there to begin with? That's the thing. He didn't create these people; they were there.
Well, look at how he started his campaign. When he came down that escalator, and he said, "We need to build a wall."
Right.
Why do we need to build a wall? Because Mexico and all of these other countries are sending murderers and rapists, and it's just this crazy. Any other person, if this had been like a 90-year-old grandpa, you would have been like, "All right, grandpa, thank you. We're going to send you back to the home now. It's enough." But because it was Donald Trump, and because he's a billionaire and he has all this money and influence, all of a sudden, what he says is the gospel.
Yeah.
And I think he was tapping into that, as you say, tribe mentality, where anyone who is different than us, they just don't belong. And that is a powerful force in not only American politics, but international politics, going all the way back through history. And it's unfortunate. It really is. And, you saw Hitler do it in Nazi Germany. You see Vladimir Putin doing it in Russia right now. It's a world phenomenon. And all these nationalists and racist leaders and politicians are taking advantage of it to gain power and to ultimately fundamentally change democracy as we know it throughout the world.
Yeah. Sorry to lose my train of thought, but we don't have any sound on the website, so I was just looking into that.
We don't have any sound.
We have sound on the podcast, so.
Well, that's all that's important.
That's all that matters. But we have, for you guys who are listening, we are streaming this live on Twitch. So follow us at Mosquito Ninja 7. So twitch.tv/Mosquito Ninja 7. And you can participate in the podcast, listen to us live, just kind of shoot the shit. But so one thing that I think about Donald Trump and what you just said is that this motherfucker somehow managed to say some of the worst things that would have sunk any other politician. And that's one thing that is interesting about him. That you got to give it to the fucking guy. Somehow he doesn't apologize. Or he doesn't. It doesn't matter. So before him, remember that one guy that I forget what his name, that he just went, "Yeehaw!" and ruined his fucking career?
Howard Dean.
He just went, "We're going to go to Mexico. We're going to go, weehaw!" And just by doing that one fucking noise, he ruined his fucking career, right? Somehow this motherfucker has said, every time something new comes up, he's grabbing him by the pussy. You think, okay, this is gonna get him. Nope, they didn't get him. He said the people are racist. He is involved with some Russian scandal. He fucked a porn star. It is just, he's managed to, and that makes it, what's interesting is that we live in a society in which facts are not important anymore, right? So
they're important. They're important,
but
to
they can be
a very important group of people. However, they're not important to everybody, right? And I think that's the key distinction is, okay, we lost all of these Midwestern states, right? Democrats lost all of these Midwestern states because look at the voters that determined who won those states. Pretty much white, middle-class voters, lower middle class, that are working in factories and auto workers. I mean, you see the UAW, United Auto Workers Union, going on strike this week. They're the ones that decided the election, for better or for worse, because all of these states, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, so forth, they went for Obama. in 2008 and 2012, right? And why did they vote for Trump? That's a key question you have to ask, is why did these voters change from Obama to Trump?
Because they wanted change, and they didn't find it, or they didn't find, and that's the funny thing about change, right? Is that we want like immediate satisfaction or like results, and even though like there might have been a lot of changes throughout the Obama administration, it wasn't like an immediate thing. It wasn't a tangible thing for them. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
But do you think that it was because he said, okay, we need to build a wall? All of these Mexicans coming in are rapists, they're murderers. Do you think that was what swayed them?
Bro, I think that if you are a white guy that's sitting in Minnesota and your job fucking sucks and you're not making any money, then you're just angry and you're just fucking sitting there angry and you're just like this fucking, you don't know what it is and you just feel like a loser and you're like, fuck this. And you're like, when there's this fucking Mexicans, it's got to be the fucking Mexicans. And they don't even know. And they don't know what it is. And it could be the fucking Mexicans. It could not. It's funny because the whole immigration thing, we had a podcast about that, so listen to that immigration one. But I think it's very skewed the way they sell you that shit. Like, yeah, they're coming and taking jobs. Meanwhile, fucking, like we talked about this before, fucking Google is not paying any fucking taxes or barely any. How much money is going into that? Probably more than the fucking Mexicans are taking or whatever, right? That's the funny thing. But as a voting member of society, somebody is just sitting at home pissed off, watching the football game, not being able to get what they want to get, buy what they want to buy, they just get mad and they just want to fucking change. So it's understandable. Like, you want to change. You're angry. You hate this other tribe that's here. This is my fucking country. Even though it's happened over and over again, because there was at one point they hated the Irish people, and before that it was the other people, and then all of a sudden they blended, and now you can't even tell the difference. But at one point there was a distinction. There was a clear distinction. Oh, the Irish are dirty and shit, and now they're not. You can't even tell who's Irish or not, or you're proud of being Irish or whatever. So it's interesting how that works. But I think that's what it is, right? They were sitting at home in Minnesota, pissed off, and they should have just, like, I don't know. It's just hard.
I can definitely see that. I can. But what just strikes me as very odd is that there was a ton of Obama voters that switched to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And it was economic. I mean, I think that was the driving force. Now, whether they actually believe that, Mexicans are coming in and stealing their jobs, I don't know. We have to talk with those voters. But I do think what Trump said on NAFTA and on the, Pacific trade deal, whatever that PTTP or whatever it was called. He basically said, you know what, America's got a raw deal. That's why all of these manufacturing jobs are going overseas. When that's clearly not the case. That was going to happen anyway. In fact, there's a huge argument that says NAFTA even slowed that down.
See, I don't understand that entirely. Well, so you hear, and that's the other thing, you hear him say that, and if you're a red-blooded American and you're like, we're getting taken for a ride, I don't fucking understand how that works. What do you mean? Like, what happened with the Pacific thing? I have no idea.
Well, okay, so it's very, very intricate.
Can't get this fucking audio to work, man.
So basically, NAFTA just allows free trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, right? And
okay.
And Trump is currently trying to get a new NAFTA through Congress. It's just NAFTA 2.0. It's not much different, right? Although he wants it to claim it is, but it's not. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, yes. That wasn't really what changed manufacturing jobs in this country. I'm sorry, it wasn't. What changed manufacturing jobs in this country, one, and I have to give Republicans credit, even though it pains me to say that, China was a huge influence on this because they, one, manipulated their currency, and two, kept wages and manufacturing costs artificially low for decades in their country. So that's what kept manufacturing jobs going over to China. That's why everything's made in China now, is because they did all that.
And this is what Republicans say, for the most part.
Well, they kind of tinge it with a little bit of racist ideology, but it's like, that's what that is what happened, but it's not for the reasons of it anyway. But yes, China is a huge influence on it. And now you're seeing China kind of pulling back, right? Because they're experiencing a lot of economic, turbulence, so to speak. But they're not moving those manufacturing jobs back to the United States. They're moving them to Sierra Leone or Australia or wherever it's cheaper labor. Yeah,
right.
That's not the United States. It will never be the United States. The only time it would be the United States is if we change our minimum wage down to $1, $2 an hour, which I can tell you right now, those voters in Minnesota will never accept, or Wisconsin, or Ohio, or Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the minimum wage will never go down. It may go up, and that's a whole nother story, but yeah.
So if they want those jobs,
or if automation becomes more of a thing.
Well, that's the other thing is, automation, the technology in general, it's the pursuit of progress, Manufacturing as we knew it 40, 50 years ago no longer exists.
Right. So,
sorry, I had a phone call coming.
Oh. Sexy phone call?
No, it was a spam phone call.
Answer it. What are you wearing? I didn't. No, so what you were in, you want to so what the Pacific thing was sold
TPP, that's what it was.
So now
Trans-Pacific Partnership.
You're saying this is not because of that, it's because of the China and the manufacturing and whatever, right?
Exactly.
But so we're saying like let's change it.
Okay, let me amend that. It wasn't necessarily China. It was these companies who wanted to save money.
Boy, it makes sense if you are in a, and that's what happens. That's where you start like, do you tamper with it? Do you tamper with capitalism? Do you not? If you don't tamper with capitalism, then it makes sense. Or you're gonna hire the smartest people to figure out how to spend less and produce more, right? So that means figure out how to pay the least amount in taxes, figure out how to pay the least amount on labor. They're not out there to make anything other than a profit.
Yeah, they're not there to help society along.
Which is fine. That's their goal. That's what they're supposed to do. And that's where you would expect that, there's some sort of government entity in which they keeps them honest or keeps them level or whatever else. And that's what those deals are supposed to do, right? So the transatlantic deal allows Canada and United States.
No, that's NAFTA. NAFTA is Canada
to trade without. Because that's the thing.
Basically free trade where you don't have a whole lot of tariffs and all that.
Yeah, because in
there's
Colombia,
exceptions, but for the most part.
If you want to get a TV in Colombia or a Nintendo or anything that's American made, it costs you way more because there's tariffs and shit that you have to pay.
Because they're not part of NAFTA.
I remember whenever we came to the United States as a kid, we would always buy like something that was more expensive because it was cheaper. Yeah. Like a TV or something like that, or like whatever. So that makes sense. So Trump is saying we're going to change it. We're getting a horrible deal with this. Mm-hmm. But
it's the same. It's the same thing.
But what's funny is that most people that have something to say with him, like he's fixing it, they probably don't understand it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Well, no. I mean, I don't even understand it, right? And I went to law school for 3 years, and so like, can you imagine someone who doesn't have a higher education degree and is working at let's say a GM manufacturing plant? How do they understand the intricacies of NAFTA?
Nobody does.
They don't. So it's easy for Trump to come along and say, hey, your problems, the reason everyone is getting laid off is because of this thing called NAFTA. Whatever the fuck that is.
So they're like, oh man, fuck NAFTA.
And then it's easy for them to go along with that because they don't know what it is. And they don't know what it does, So that's part of the problem. Now the other part is automation, right? Where manufacturing jobs are just going away, and they're not coming back.
And that's gonna happen, in my opinion. I'm all for this. I listened to Andrew Yang or Chang, and I told you about it. And I've been talking about this since then. It makes a lot of sense. It's a new candidate. He's going for UBI, Universal Basic Income, because automation is going to take over. And the reason I believe this is because I see it. I think it's going to happen, bro. I think there's no job. And I think as humans, we like to think that you'll never be able to get my job. My job is too complex. Fuck that, man. They're coming up with computers now that can make phone calls and talk to people.
Yeah, I mean, have you been getting those phone calls that have your same phone number?
Yeah. And then you talk to them, and they're like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Hi, is John there?" And you're like, "No." "Oh, well, I'll have you on the phone." It's all a fucking thing. And then they make 200 phone calls when I make 50, and it's going to be a more effective way. And they're going to figure out how to do this more and more and more. So that's when you start thinking, at what point? And and here's what's fucking funny: you can't talk about capitalism without hurting somebody's feelings, because they're like, "Well, no, that's not going to happen." You gotta work. You gotta work hard. And you got to work for what you deserve. And that's how we've been pre-wired, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's going to get to the point that there's nothing for us to do.
Well, and people can still work hard. It's just what you're doing. I'm sorry. The manufacturing jobs that we've had for the past 50, 60 years, they're not going to exist in 50 years. Come 2050, 2060, cars are not going to be manufactured by people. They're not. I don't care what the unions do. They're just not, because it's not sustainable when you have this much technological innovation. There are robotic arms putting together chassis of vehicles right now. Why do you need humans?
Well, not even that, man. They're retail jobs and self-driving cars. I can't wait for fucking self-driving cars. I don't want to fucking drive a car ever again. I hate that shit. I want to just sit in my car.
I like driving, so...
Yeah. You can drive it. I'm sure you can drive it if you want to. But, there's not going to be traffic because they can talk to each other. Do you know that? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that's a little freaky to me. But...
No, man, that's fucking awesome. Like, you're going to work. You imagine you get in your car at 7 a.m., you fall asleep. And you just appear at work.
Well...
Then, think about it, like, even working in D.C. wouldn't be that much of a leap.
Oh, I think that's always going to be a clusterfuck.
No, I think about it, because if there's no traffic, you could go to D.C. at 120 miles an hour. You're not actually driving. You can sleep all the way there. You could travel at night for all it matters. And larger commutes could become more and more doable.
I mean, maybe. It depends. I mean, it's just there's a lot of people in D.C.
Yeah, but...
That many people on the highway at one time.
Well, I'm just saying,
that's kind of where it gets a little. Yeah.
I hear you, man. But I'm just saying, like, you're
maybe
right.
Flying cars.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. Those are never gonna happen. People keep saying that we're out of flying cars. We should have flying cars by now. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sure I'm sure they could do it, but how are you gonna fucking regulate?
Well, I think the thing that really, is a nail in the coffin for that is it's really expensive. I mean, you have like jet fuel that you have to get. It's like,
no, but that's a problem. It's an engineering problem. Somebody can fix that.
Well, yeah, but like the only other way to like have propulsion to get in the air is like ion drives, and those don't have enough power right now to like get you in the air. So.
There was a time in which somebody would have told you, having a gig of data is you need a room.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah.
And it was impossible for you to have it, and then they figure it out.
The theme of this podcast can just be shit changes,
Shit changes. Well, we can't have no theme. I could just have extravaganza with Tucci. Tucci extravaganza. Dude, I don't know what's going to happen on this 2020 elections.
No one does. Join the club.
I personally don't want Trump to be reelected. I feel like the guy is out of his mind. And I know there's a lot of people...
You just now came to this conclusion.
Well, you have to thread light it because I like to always keep my mind open that I could be wrong. In every situation, I think that's what keeps you humble or what keeps you sane. If you think you're right, then you're not learning anything, right? So you could... Mm-hmm. So, if I'm wrong and I'm an asshole, maybe this guy's figuring out whatever. But from my perspective, from what I'm looking at, The guy seems to be an impulsive fuck that just wants to do what he wants to do. Doesn't want to listen to experts or advisors or anything. He's very emotional. I feel like this motherfucker is just getting rich. Like, he was broke. This is my theory. The guy was broke. He's done something crazy. He somehow figured out how to get elected. He, like, struck gold. He couldn't believe it himself. That's what he wanted to release his taxes. And he's just making money, setting things up, making it through. He wants to get reelected if possible. He's going to make history, dude. This motherfucker is making history.
If you thought Donald Trump was bad, imagine this. There was I think Politico or The Hill or one of the news organizations came out with a report saying, okay, guess what? The Trump family is getting ready to succeed Donald Trump and the president. So... And I think they said the top contender was Donald Trump Jr.
Like, he's going to run?
Can you imagine a little fucker, like, running the country?
He wouldn't do it. I don't think
he's preparing, though.
I don't think anybody could. Do you think he would
Have
get
you been
elected?
seeing these rallies? They're chanting Donald Trump Jr.'s name. Like, Don Jr., Don, it's like...
Damn.
And they want him to run.
Well, because there's people... The hardcore Donald Trump follower is an interesting kind of person. You can't talk him out of it.
There's a lot of them.
They're a true believer. Nothing could. You could show Donald Trump fucking a donkey tomorrow, like live video.
Fake news.
That's fake news. Yeah, it's impossible. How do you do that? I want to get to that level where I could do whatever the fuck I want and nobody will ever question it. That's gotta be something, dude.
And it just blows my mind. I mean, had Obama done half the stuff this man has done, Donald Trump, can you imagine? Well, can you imagine the backlash? There would be armed riots in the streets right now.
Armed riots?
There would be people trying to overthrow the government.
You're so fucking crazy, man. I don't know. I don't know. Like if Obama
had tried to obstruct Congress from even investigating his administration.
Well, he wouldn't show his birth certificate. No, if Obama had come out to be with tapes of him fucking a porn star, what do you think that would happen? I think his wife
Stormy
would.
Daniels. Oh man!
I think his wife would have fucked him up.
Well, that would be the least of his worries. I mean, hey, like half the nation would have been on his doorstep with fucking AK-47s and whatever else.
Who else you think could pull that off, man? There's got to be somebody else.
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. Oh my god, I hate that motherfucker. I don't even know what he talks about. I just hate his face, honestly. A total turtle-looking motherfucker. I know he's been. I know he's a burn.
He's probably the only person that I hate more than Donald Trump.
So most people, and I vaguely know who Mitch McConnell is, but who's Mitch McConnell?
He's the Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate,
and that means.
So he is the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, and the Republican Party is currently the majority party in the United States.
Does that mean that most Republican senators are going to listen to what he says and act and vote in his
Well, that's
favor?
putting it a little lightly.
Right.
He is like the king in the Senate.
Is there an equivalent to the Democrats in which they'll do whatever?
They have a minority leader, but Chuck Schumer's the minority leader, and he's kind of placid, Like, imagine like a limp dick. That is Chuck Schumer.
Chuck Schumer is the majority leader for the Democrats. I never heard of Chuck Schumer. I've heard of Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Because I know he's a super fucking conservative guy.
Well, I kind of credit Mitch McConnell with like single-handedly destroying American democracy, but
damn, bro, that deep what?
I mean, look at what he's done.
I don't know.
He has single-handedly enabled Donald Trump.
Oh, it was him?
100%. Go all the way back to Obama's presidency when he was still majority leader, right? He obstructed Obama from filling a Supreme Court vacancy. He obstructed Merrick Garland, who was Obama's Supreme Court nominee, from even getting a hearing in the Senate.
I remember that.
Yeah. So when Antonin Scalia died, he was the old Supreme Court justice back in 2015.
Let's break it down because I I mean, maybe I'm dumber than the average person, but I don't feel like most people know this. So, like,
No, probably not.
The justices are the
So-
ones that make the decisions.
So, okay, you have 3 branches of government in the United
well,
States.
we know that, you fucking bitch.
Well, I don't know how much you want me to break it down. I mean, you said.
No, okay, so go ahead.
So it's the judiciary, which is pretty much the Supreme Court and any lesser courts, so like Court of Appeals, district courts. Then you have the presidency, which is obviously Donald Trump right now, and all of the administrative states, such as the EPA, the Department of Education, and so forth. And then you have, Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate, 2 chambers of the legislature. So the Senate is the one that, upon the president's recommendation and nomination of a Supreme Court justice, the Senate is the one that has to vote to confirm that justice, right?
And the justices have a lot of power because they're the ones that decide, like, if abortion is legal, if gay marriage is legal, right?
Pretty much. They decide a lot of really important things in this country. Yes.
And long story short, if I remember correctly, then they have to die to lose.
Yeah, they have lifetime tenure.
So they never get reelected. I mean, they never lose their job unless they die.
Well, they can get impeached, but I mean, as we see with Donald Trump, impeachment is not easy.
Right. So, so one of those guys died, Scalia, and it was fucking Obama's turn to do it.
Right. So he died during Obama's presidency, and I think it was February.
But it was almost over.
February of 2015. This was a year and a half before the election.
And then they just fucking didn't let him do it.
No.
They were just like, nah. He's like, I nominate this guy. They're like, nah, it's okay.
And you know what Mitch McConnell said? He said, you know what? An election's coming up. Let's let the people decide. And you know what he's saying now? He says if a justice is going to die during the last year of Donald Trump's first term,
he doesn't give a fuck. He's doing it.
He's going to still, he'll absolutely, he said, guaranteed.
How did this even come up? Somebody asked him?
Yeah. Reporter asked him.
Well, of course, because he's a fucking, that's what blows my mind about, like, politicians, that they're completely
but
up their ass.
Let me just say, to the average person, this may seem like, well, what's the big deal? He's just being like a turd, This is in the Constitution. The Senate has to first hold a hearing, and then vote to confirm or not to confirm a nominee to the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell just said, nope, we're not doing that.
Oh, didn't fucking wasn't the one that Trump ended up not putting as a nominee turned out to be some guy that raped some or like abused some girl in a college party or some shit like that?
Yeah, Kavanaugh.
That's so fucking hilarious, man. Well, it's not hilarious, but it's fucked up, man. It just doesn't make any sense, dude.
And like now you're having all these other accusations starting to like materialize, like with
about the same dude,
Ramirez, Kavanaugh, and like apparently this guy just can't keep it in his pants,
right? Like
anywhere he goes, right? Because the accusations are remarkably consistent, where he's just like throwing his dick on these women.
Dude, if you're like the justice of the United States, you'd be showing your dick around. Oh, someone's here. Elias just got here. If you were the justice of the United States,
I would not, but yes, maybe you.
Let's finish this podcast right here.
Okay.
What do you think? And then we'll start a new one with Elias.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. Or should we just keep it going?
It's up to you, man. Whatever you want to do.
Well, I want to get another beer. We're going to finish this one right here, and we're going to restart the other one. I might just keep it going from here. We'll see. But this is good. This is interesting. Thank you for listening, guys. Shout out for those who continue to listen. I took out the commercials. Fuck those commercials. I was making like 32 cents. I didn't think it was worth it. But I will be taking donations.
Patreon.
Oh, I made an Instagram account. So it's smart stupid stuff. So it's smart underscore stupid smart stupid, yeah, it's underscore smart, and then a number, which is, what is the number? God dang it. Hang on, guys. Fucking no. It was like 87. God dang it. I'll put it in the description. Smart, stupid stuff. I think it was 87, 83. I'll figure it out, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll start a new podcast here with Elias. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.